All right, welcome to Savold Fantasy Talk. We are back after another interesting week in NFL football. John, there are a lot of things that happened, and most interesting to me was LeGarrette Blount, who absolutely broke out this week against Houston, which has a decent defense with J.J. Watt. And I thought Blount, usually I always talk about stay away from New England RBs, but Blount is getting the majority of the carries. He's had over 22 carries all 3 weeks, and though he really did not have a great yards per carry until the last run of the game for them, his touchdown production has been there, and that's extremely important.
I think LeGarrette Blount is everything you want to see in a running back right now, but I think that's right now. And in a week when Tom Brady's back, are we going to see the LeGarrette Blount that we see right now, or are we going to see the LeGarrette Blount that we see with Tom Brady? And I think we're going to see the LeGarrette Blount we see with Tom Brady, because Tom Brady is going to look to James White as his Dion Lewis back, as his receiving back, because the Patriots don't just dramatically change their offense. It doesn't magically happen.
Yeah.
Their offense just doesn't change. It's been the same for years and years and years, and I think we're going to see LeGarrette Blount still get touchdowns, still get over 15 carries maybe when they're up by 30 points, but I just don't see LeGarrette Blount being a top 10 running back for the rest of the year. I think he could still be a flex, though.
That's a good point, John. Jacoby Brissett, and we don't even know who's playing quarterback next week due to Brissett's injury and Garoppolo's injury. They're really relying on LeGarrette Blount, and Bill Belichick has been great at utilizing their running game as a bigger facet of their team. And I think that Bill Belichick knows what he's doing, and maybe he'll go back to featuring 2-3 RBs in a given game, or not even the same running back week to week. But I think LeGarrette Blount, solid RB2 for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
I take him.
Agree.
And then also, a lot of quarterbacks struggled last week. There are some quarterbacks that performed great, like Trevor Siemian, who had over 28 points, and Aaron Rodgers, who after 2 weeks of basically 2 weeks of struggling, had 26. Then get your good quarterbacks such as Russell Wilson, 13 points, Cam Newton, 12, Phillip Rivers, 11. Carson Palmer. Palmer also struggled. Ben Roethlisberger, 6 points. I think this is exactly why I say draft quarterbacks late. Because even though it seems like, I'm not getting a big name, people won't respect me earlier in the season, when two of the top 3 running backs were basically not drafted in the first 12 rounds. You have Drew Brees, who is a great quarterback, always has been, always will be. Then you have Matt Ryan, who's a waiver red, Matthew Stafford, late round, Aaron Rodgers and Cam Newton, who were early basically. Andrew Luck, who's late, Derek Carr, late, Ryan Tannehill, undrafted, James Winston, undrafted or late, Carson Wentz, undrafted. I think you have to just oblige to the strategy of taking quarterbacks late from this point on.
I agree. I think people still love to take quarterbacks because everybody wants to have Cam Newton on their team.
Yeah. And
everybody loves to have, I have Aaron Rodgers, but it doesn't help that much. Because every quarterback performs. They all put up 10 points. Yeah, if you have Cam Newton, he's going to put up 25 or 30 because he runs so much. But I don't think it's worth that when you could have an RB1 or an RB2 who you drafted in the 4th round instead of Cam Newton.
I think Cam Newton is overrated, and here's why. Cam Newton, yes, it produces a ton because of his running, but he's never really put up that great statistics as a passer. And I know he's a not run first, but a mobile quarterback. But he's never posted over 62% for completion percentage. That's scary. He hasn't posted over 60% in 3 years. Last year, 59.8, basically 60%. I mean, that's not great numbers. How efficient is he as a quarterback, really?
How efficient are his receivers, I think, are the question. Cam Newton has never had a star receiver. I mean, that's the thing to remember about Cam Newton.
He had Steve Smith for a while. He's Kelvin Benjamin.
Steve Smith at the back end of his career. Kelvin Benjamin has been on and off. Kelvin Benjamin put up a goose egg last week, which was very surprising to me. But I don't think you can trash on Cam Newton. I think Cam Newton is still the best quarterback in the league, or second best behind Aaron Rodgers.
I think that Cam Newton, John, not fantasy-wise, but overall, is not a top 3 quarterback. And
Tell me who's better, Chris.
Rodgers, Brady, and
Don't say Breeze.
And
I can tell you who the top 3 quarterbacks are, and Drew Brees isn't one of them.
that's just BS.
It's Cam Newton,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league. Then Tom Brady. Then Cam Newton. Right there. Then Drew Brees.
Aaron Rodgers.
Cam Newton wins. Cam Newton.
Really?
Newton,
How many Super Bowls does he have, John?
Cam Newton, he got to one last year. He's a young quarterback. I think Cam Newton has so much room to grow as a passer.
Right now.
Right now, I would take Cam Newton over anybody except Tom Brady and Drew Brees. And Aaron Rodgers.
Drew Brees is the most underrated quarterback in the NFL.
I agree. Drew Brees is amazing, but he's not Cam Newton.
And probably that's for the best. I mean, you compare the numbers of Drew Brees and Cam Newton over the past. What would you consider Cam Newton's eligible years for comparing? With
I think you take away probably his first 2.
First 2? So since 2012. I'm going to read you. Okay, 2013. 5,000 passing yards, 39 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 68%. Cam Newton, 61%, 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions.
Okay, let's think about this for a second. Drew Brees is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I agree with that.
I understand that, obviously.
He's a fantastic quarterback, and we've not... Cam Newton is a young... Would you agree that Cam Newton is a young player?
I mean, he's in his 6th season, but yeah.
He's young. Drew Brees isn't. Cam Newton still has time to grow as a quarterback.
We're talking about right now, this year.
But you're comparing years where Cam Newton was younger than Drew Brees was.
Then what do you want to compare?
Let's look at Drew Brees before he went to the Saints.
Before he went to the Saints.
He was not as good as Cam Newton was in his big first year.
Right now.
Right now, I would take Cam Newton.
And we're talking about right now.
Right now, I would take Cam Newton over Drew Brees.
Why?
Because Cam Newton is more versatile. He does more. He's I don't want to say exciting to watch, but Cam Newton brings to the table
He's a game changer.
He's a game changer. He does everything, and Drew Brees just isn't.
I think Drew Brees, yes, he's older, but I think that plays into his game as a strength. He is one of the best quarterbacks at breaking down defenses, just with his mind. Pre-snap, he can do everything. That's some things that Cam Newton can't do. I mean,
If you gave Cam Newton the receivers that Drew Brees has had in his career, he would be better.
Who has Drew Brees had in his career?
Jimmy Graham, the second most successful tight end.
Greg Olsen.
You're telling me that Jimmy Graham in his prime is not...
You're
telling me right now...
Cam Newton has had Greg Olsen throughout his entire career. And Drew Brees had Jimmy Graham for probably 2 good years.
That's just false. Jimmy Graham was probably maybe second best or best tight end in the years that the Saints had him.
Yeah, but for how many years?
Let's look at Jimmy Graham, Chris.
All right, so we're searching up Jimmy Graham. He had, I would say, 3 years, 3 good years.
4 good years. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Greg Olsen has been with Cam Newton for 6 years.
And you're telling me that you would rather have Greg Olsen than Jimmy Graham in his prime?
I think Greg Olsen plays into Cam Newton's strengths more because he's a very smart tight end.
And Jimmy Graham is better. Was better. Not anymore.
Steve Smith.
Brandon Cooks has more. He's more explosiveness. I mean, Steve Smith.
Steve Smith has less explosiveness than Brandon Cooks.
No, I disagree with that. Steve Smith is very explosive. It was very explosive. Still is, honestly. Steve Smith is a great receiver. But Cam Newton, he never had the chemistry with Steve Smith that we saw with...
And whose fault is that?
You can blame Cam Newton all you want, but Cam Newton was the MVP last year, and Drew Brees wasn't.
And do you know why that
Cam
is?
Newton almost brought his team to an undefeated season.
Yeah.
Drew Brees did that a while back, yeah. But who will have made it to more Super Bowls or won more Super Bowls at the end of their career?
Who right now?
Cam Newton.
Cam Newton, who also had one of the best defenses in the NFL.
Chris, do you want to make a bet right now?
No, how would we measure it?
Who What team has a better record by the end of the year, the Panthers or the Saints?
The Panthers are clearly a more strong team than the
Yeah,
Saints.
because of Cam Newton.
No, because
their
of their
offense
defense.
is Cam Newton.
And their defense is their team.
That's you're talking about the Broncos, not the Panthers.
No, I'm talking about the Panthers.
Let's look at the Panthers defense.
On fantasy.
I'm just looking at
You're measuring a defense by their fantasy points.
No, I'm just looking at them, Chris. They've given up 21 points, 27 points, 22 points. That's not impressive.
Last year.
That's this year.
I'm talking about last year.
All right, then let's look. Looking it up.
And let's look up the Saints, how many points they've given up.
Because Drew Brees can only play in shootouts.
Maybe it's because he only plays in shootouts.
Okay, so last year, yes, the Panthers had a great defense. Okay, so they gave up 9 one week, but then 24, 27, 23, 23, 27, 29, 37, then 10, good week, 44, 14,
How many
38.
turnovers did they produce? Look up their turnovers. Defensive. And while he's doing that, fellow listeners, 31, 26, 27, 26, 39, 21, 21, 52, 49, 34, 47, 24, 38. Let's just think about that for a second. The Saints, Drew Brees has played with less his entire career and is playing with less now. And I just think calling Cam Newton a better quarterback than Drew Brees. And
I'm saying, you said right now, Chris,
I know.
Drew Brees is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Yes, he's had a better career than Cam Newton.
Right now.
Right now, I would take Cam Newton over Drew Brees for my quarterback on my team. I would take Cam Newton over Drew Brees. To start a franchise around, I would take Cam Newton.
You're always moving to the future with Cam Newton. If you wanted to win the Super Bowl this year,
if I wanted a quarterback to win me one game, I would take Cam Newton.
One game?
Yes.
Cam Newton.
Yes.
Really?
Drew Brees. Yes.
I think Cam Newton. I just really think that Drew Brees.
If you have crappy receivers, you want Cam Newton. Cam Newton can do anything. He's Superman. Cam Newton takes the game into his hands. He does not rely on anyone else.
Drew Brees hasn't necessarily had great receivers from 2013 to 2015, and he still put up good numbers.
Yeah, so did Cam Newton. Cam Newton's put up good numbers every year.
I'm saying with crappy receivers.
And
Drew
what did
Brees
Cam Newton have last year when he won the MVP? Oh, Ted Ginn.
And
Chris, was Ted Ginn good?
No.
No.
Greg Olsen.
Greg Olsen is
Josh Norman. Luke
Josh
Kuechly.
Josh Norman's
Thomas
not a receiver.
Davis. I'm talking about the defense, which put Cam Newton in better position to succeed.
Cam Newton still won the games, Chris.
Did he win the Super Bowl?
No, he
That's
didn't, because
right.
the Broncos had a better defense.
I think Drew Brees is a better leader.
You think Drew Brees would have carved up the Broncos defense? I guarantee you wouldn't have.
Okay, let's look it up. Last time Drew Brees played the Broncos.
Well, but did he play the Broncos with their defense from last year? No, because they didn't have DeMarcus Ware yet.
And while we're searching that up, we'll move on to the Philly backfield. All right, never mind. Okay, Drew Brees did not play Denver last year, but 2014, if you would like to compare just 2014, he did not play Denver.
He did not just play Denver either.
All right, it's beside the point. Carolina's defense was very, very good last year.
I agree.
Can we look up Carolina's defense and use them as a comparison from last year?
We already looked at Carolina's defense. They were good. They were very good. Chris, I think it's time that we move on from this subject.
All right.
Because we have to move on.
As long as you agree that Drew Brees is a better quarterback.
Drew Brees is not a better quarterback than Cam Newton.
That's just bull.
Cam Newton. We're not talking about who's a better quarterback in their career. Cam Newton, if you gave me the worst team on the earth, and I could have one quarterback to lead besides Tom Brady. We're not talking about Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers. If I could have Drew Brees or Cam Newton with a horrible team, you're telling me you would take Drew Brees?
I'm telling you probably wouldn't have to take a horrible team. Anyways.
I would take Cam
Le'Veon Bell's coming back next week. What does that mean for fantasy owners? What it means is if you have Le'Veon Bell, you're set. You should be fine. If you don't have D'Angelo Williams, trade for him now. Give up a RB3, or give up an RB4 for him, or some wide receiver. Doesn't really matter, but you want to have D'Angelo Williams on your bench, and he's at his highest value lowest value right now. Waiver ads, I think number one across the board should be Jordan Howard. initially he was projected to be a 13th or 14th round pick.
I drafted him. I thought he was going to be
I
good.
thought that he was highly touted, at least in my mind, prior to the season. But then as Jeremy Langford, as Chicago's coaches gained more confidence in Jeremy Langford, his stock dropped. People took higher upside running backs, such as Devontae Booker, with at that point a less clear offense or running back situation in their team instead of him. But I think now he is the best running back or best waiver ad period.
I agree. I think last week we even saw Jordan Howard with Jeremy Langford in the game. He took control, and I think the one thing to be wary of is I don't think you can expect him to be too good in a tough matchup because the Bears' offensive line just isn't that good. But we saw Jordan Howard. He has breakaway speed.
Mm-hmm.
He does, and I could see Jordan Howard scoring a long touchdown next week, like a 20-yard touchdown, 30-yard touchdown. When he gets into the clear, he goes.
Yes.
And the only problem that I saw last night was too many rushes for losses because of the difficulty he had getting through the Bears' very weak offensive line. But let's look at Jordan Howard's matchups coming up in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah. So other guys,
he's playing Detroit next week, shaky run defense. Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Green Bay, and Minnesota. So
until week 8, you're
set with Jordan Howard,
and that's basically when he will be playing, unless he takes the job for the entire season. Also, Jameson Crowder, he's had no less than 7 targets in the first 3 weeks. Kirk Cousins clearly trusts him. He was used in the screen game a significant amount. I really like him. I liked him coming out of Duke last year. He is a high upside slot receiver, at least for the Redskins. Cameron Brate, Tampa Bay tight end. Who is that, you might be asking? And I was asking that when he scored 2 touchdowns, when he scored 2 touchdowns and had 46 yards and 10 targets in week 3 against LA. After Austin Seferian-Jenkins after he was cut by the team, Cameron Brate is set at tight end, and the snap should not be an issue. I think Cameron Brate, if you're in a need for a tight end, pick him up. You might as well. He's playing Denver and then Carolina and then a bye next week. So even if you don't get him this week, he'll probably be dropped by week 7 anyways. Over-unders, John. First off, LeGarrette Blount.
All right.
LeGarrette Blount and Melvin Gordon.
I'm taking Melvin Gordon over LeGarrette Blount.
I think I'm taking Gordon as well. Let's see, LeGarrette Blount or Devonta Freeman.
I think I want Devonta Freeman on this one. But I think it's a close one because of Tevin Coleman taking all the touchdowns, but Devonta Freeman put up big numbers last week. I think he's still a viable
I would go
RB2
Freeman
options.
as well. Lamar Miller or LeGarrette Blount?
Oh, Lamar Miller, not even close.
LeGarrette Blount or Eddie Lacy.
See, that's a tough one. I think you still want Lacy because I think what we saw last week from Lacy was the Eddie Lacy from 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He had 17 attempts, 103 yards. The only thing that we're looking for with Lacy is touchdowns. I think Blount could be a solid RB2, but has very little upside in a Tom Brady offense. I think Eddie Lacy has RB1 upside this year, just if he can get back to the form he's been in. LeGarrette Blount, I just don't see him being any more than an RB2 with Tom Brady back.
I agree. Lacy's been pretty efficient when he's been given the ball. It's just a matter of is he going to get these touchdown runs or touchdown carries, and is he going to get more carries in general. LeGarrette Blount or Jeremy Hill, I'm going Blount easily here.
I'm taking Hill. And not just because he's on my team. But I think
John, I say that Jeremy Hill finishes below LeGarrette Blount by the time the season ends.
I say Jeremy Hill finishes above LeGarrette Blount before the season ends.
Bet on it!
Jeremy Hill, last week, in a struggling offense, was the offense. He led that team. And yes, besides his 50-yard run, he was not that great. But Jeremy Hill, mixed with Tyler Eifert when he comes back, that offense is going to regain what they had last year. LeGarrette Blount is going to lose everything the minute he's not going to lose everything. He's still going to score some short yardage touchdowns. but I think he's going to lose a lot of value when Tom Brady comes back. Bill Belichick's offense never changes. You don't want to own Patriots running backs. Sell high on LeGarrette Blount this week.
All right, now T.Y. Hilton. He struggled the first 2 weeks, but then put up monster numbers in week 3 with 23 points, and that's due to 174 receiving yards and 1 touchdown. John, would you take T.Y. Hilton or Doug Baldwin?
Oh, Chris, you always pick the guys that are close to my heart.
Ha.
I'm going Hilton right now, especially considering Dante Moncrief is out, and it's hard.
I'm going Hilton as well.
I think Hilton has wide receiver 1 upside this year. I had him ranked, and I think in my draft rankings I had him top 10. T.Y. Hilton when Andrew Luck is healthy is a top 10 receiver in my mind.
I agree. T.Y. Hilton or Larry Fitzgerald.
T.Y. Hilton.
T.Y. Hilton for me too. T.Y. Hilton or Allen Robinson.
I'm going Hilton.
I'm going Robinson.
Because I just don't. I've lost interest in the Jacksonville offense.
No.
I think Blake Bortles has just not performed this year. T.Y. Hilton with Andrew Luck, I'll take him over most guys. Honestly, T.Y. Hilton with Andrew Luck is really good.
Yeah, I agree.
Allen Robinson, is he still high-end wide receiver 2? Yes. Does he have the upside of what he had last year? No. T.Y. Hilton has infinite upside with Andrew Luck at quarterback. I think you want T.Y. Hilton over Allen Robinson.
All right, now Redskins. We're playing Cleveland next week.
This has to be an easy win. This has to be an easy win.
2-2. Hopefully, at that point, we'll be in pretty good place in the division, depending on how the Eagles and Dallas finish. I think Will Compton, who I absolutely love, he struggled. He missed a lot of tackles. He had one very good pass deflection down the middle of the field, but other than that, it wasn't an all-around great game for him. Also, the run game, they're not trying to get the run game going for whatever reason. Matt Jones still wasn't very great. They had a screenplay to him, and I think that's probably where the running backs will be featured the most, is in the screen game anyways. I mean, he had a season-high 17 carries, but he really didn't do much with it, with only 65 rushing yards.
I think this week is the week they have to establish the run game if they want to win this division. I mark my words, they have to get the run game going. They're not going to win by just chucking the ball all over the place. Yes, that gives you a win against the Giants, but it's not going to get you wins against better teams, like when they play Cincinnati in Week 8, or when they play Minnesota Week 10, Green Bay Week 11, Arizona Week 13. It's going to get harder. This is a week where they can assert themselves as a team who can make the playoffs. They must win this week, and I think they need to feed Matt Jones 20 carries just to see what he can do.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins, he played pretty well. He made a few boneheaded decisions. For instance, on the 1 or 2 yard line, he rolled out and tried to extend a play with only 6 seconds left, and then ended up being sacked. Even if he did get the ball off there, the halftime would have come. Luckily, we did win the game, but if not, he would have been to blame for the loss in a lot of ways. He was able to throw the ball better. He made a great throw to Deshaun Jackson far down the field, and then also he made another throw deep down the field to Deshaun Jackson, which was pass interference. The Giants cornerback pulled on Jackson's backside, and Jackson ended up getting hurt on that play because Landon Collins stepped on him. But that was definitely pass interference. Red zone efficiency, extremely important. Dustin Hopkins is the number 1 kicker in fantasy, and that's for a reason. Once we get past the 50-yard line, it's very hard for us to move the ball. I think that if we can improve our red zone efficiency, we can easily win the division. And, I mean, John, do you think there's so many times when the Redskins have struggled, Kirk Cousins throwing interceptions, making stupid decisions, Matt Jones not getting it done on the 1 yard line. I mean, more and more things keep happening.
The first thing you look at is, where's Jordan Reed? They need to get Jordan Reed in the end zone. Mm-hmm. And when you think red zone, who do you think of? Jordan Reed.
Yeah.
He was their red zone target last year. Deshaun Jackson, yes, he's your in between the 20s, throw a bomb down the field. Yes, awesome. Deshaun Jackson. Jordan Reed, get him the ball in the end zone. You need to get Jordan Reed involved. Do I think Matt Jones should get some red zone opportunities? Yes, because I think Cleveland has a really soft run defense. But I think the way for the Redskins to fix that is finding Jordan Reed in the end zone, because I just don't think that throwing these fade routes to Jamison Crowder is going to work anymore.
All right, so keys to the game for Cleveland. Number 1, get Josh Doctson or Jordan Reed the ball in the end zone. Stop relying so much on the fade. Number 2, give Quinton Dunbar more snaps at cornerback, especially with Rashad Breeland most likely being injured. 3, work out John Sullivan at center because the interior offensive line has really been struggling. And lastly, run the ball and just be efficient as an offense. So, from Chris Savold and John Schooner, this is Savold Fantasy Talk. See ya!
Script and get access. All my niggas is masters. All my women is doctors. Cold world is just the tip of the iceberg. So talk, it takes the tip of the iceberg. Don't trip out that, they just words.